Welcome back to the Daily Rundown. I'm Dan Morfitz. Thank you for watching Channel 7. Now, if you want to get in touch with the show, we're at the Daily Rundown on Twitter. That's squiggle, the Daily Rundown. Or email dailyrundown@thatstv.com and you could have your something to say. Which brings me to you, Loz. It's your chance to have your midweek something to say.
Yeah, well, it's coming back to one of those stories that's kind of got swept under the carpet, because we were sort of talking about earlier about how August is kind of usually the silly season, and it has been super fantastic silly this time.
Those Olympics, eh?
Yeah,
Silly.
yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, no, yes, all of that.
I feel like I can find out when Emmerdale's on again now. You know, all the soaps will be back to normal.
Yes, all of that running and jumping.
Honestly.
I don't know, silliness, absolutely. No, for moving away from the silliness, it's that, or that's just slipped underneath the carpet of silliness and the general joy about the Olympics, is that there's been an ongoing hangover right from the general election, which, to be fair, Channel 4 have been doing quite a good job of investigating. That's the question of that old thing. Oh yes, expenses and political expenses. It's back to haunt us again. Not this time, kind of MPs trousering stuff for duck houses and the like, but it's actually the expenses that are allowed to be spent on election campaigning. Now, during the general election, that there's limits in terms of the amount of spending that you can do, both on a constituency, so the local area, but also for a party can spend on their national campaign to sort of promote themselves nationally. So that's on things like billboards as well, with tedious pictures of David Cameron on, well, that kind of thing. Or that's what it's supposed to be.
Sorry, you just said a name from history there.
Yes.
Forgotten.
David Cameron, a little sort of.
Who is he again?
Yes, a little ghost pass, a little whisper kind of goes through the air. Anyway, little Davy Cameron. Yeah, okay. Yes, figure from the past. No, also getting little Davy Cameron elected again. What happened, though, is that there's been also questions about whether, in fact, how the Tory party accounted for all of this. Is that essentially the charge has been levelled that they were actually funneled money that was supposed to be spent nationally on particular local marginal seat campaigns to make, because those are things that kind of swing the result of elections. There's actually just a handful of seats which kind of go backwards
Places like Frimley, I believe.
Yeah, I would even say places like Rossendale, just north of Great Manchester, Morecambe, but also down in the southwest as well. That essentially the Tory party had sent out a big battle bus with activists. And that was accounted for under kind of national spending, and also that there had been quite a lot of spending in South Thanet, so up against Mr. Farage. So all of this has been a bit difficult to talk about because there's actually been ongoing kind of police investigations, but also for the first time, kind of yesterday, it emerged that the Tory party admitted that it had actually misaccounted something, or had that for one of these kind of battle bus campaigns that they'd sent out, is that also had a whole bunch of activists they put up in hotels, various places, and there was actually £38,000 worth of hotel spending which hadn't been accounted for. In the scope of a general election, £38,000 is not a lot, but crucially, it would bring, I think it's just over 20 of those marginal constituencies. It would mean that, in fact, that it brought the spending over the limit.
So misuse of funds.
So exactly. What was kind of revealed is that also those activists were given a kind of script which would say, "Hello, I'm here to tell you about Mr. or Ms. X, who is your local Tory candidate." So it was clearly focused locally, not there just to say,
"Vote for Dave."
Yes, and hear about our tedious long-term economic plan. This is quite serious because I don't necessarily think that was the only thing that kind of swung it, but also that out of, I think it was 29 seats that were targeted, 24 of those ended up being Tory. The Tory majority is 12. So all the nonsense things that we've been talking about for, ever since, for months now, all the Brexits and the Daves and the Borises and the Theresa Mays and all the things with Miliband going and the Corbyns, all of it. Of course, don't forget that all of that happened because not only because the Conservative Party did well, but because they had a majority. Because even if some of those seats had remained Lib Dem, for example, that would have been a very different situation. I don't think the Lib Dems would have ever allowed the Conservatives to have the EU referendum. It's one of those real, also kind of strange sort of sliding doors, what if sort of questions, isn't it?
So the police investigation is looking into whether they overspent and diverted national funds into local constituencies for the funding. Yeah. Does that possibly mean then that those results could be made null and void? Or a re-election could take place? What are the options? It
is a possibility. I think it's very unlikely. I think what's most likely to happen is that actually the person who's called the election agent, so the people that actually do the organisation and the organisation administrative side, they're ultimately responsible and they're the people who cop it. I think most likely that if there's some things which have been done which shouldn't have been done.
Is it a criminal activity?
There's very strict laws in terms of the whole election law, and there's great. It's also if you're a candidate or particularly if you're an agent, there's massive great bump that everyone's supposed to understand and digest. It's not good enough to say that you don't understand it. It can be quite confusing, this dividing line between what's national spending, what's local spending. And to a certain extent, the Electoral Commission, who's overall responsible for this, are still it's kind of struggling to keep up with the changes in terms of how people campaign, even things like online videos and social media. And it's kind of notionally you're supposed to declare how much it costs you, say, to make a YouTube video. I suspect that people aren't really following that properly. Again, I don't have detailed evidence to say that, but I think that there's a whole lot of area that this is actually so much has changed so rapidly. I don't think they've kept up with it.
Is it really a case of election fraud more than anything?
I think it's certainly dangerous for our democracy. We have these rules for a reason. It's so, to put it in its kind of most blunt terms, it's so that people can't buy an election. We're really vulnerable to it with our system, because it's not just a question of where there's countries where they've got proportional representation, where also your whole job is to move potentially millions of people. In Britain, where there are these marginal constituencies, where just a matter of a few hundred votes makes a massive difference. That overall, that's the real disadvantage of our electoral system, is that it's a precious few tens of thousands of people that really make the difference. So it's incredibly susceptible to being influenced. What we do know that makes a real difference, the thing is actually, it's not particularly all the TV debates, it's not the social media, it's not the flash campaigns, it's not the billboards. What makes the difference is activists going out and knocking
people on the ground, it's feet on the ground.
Yeah, you go and talk to them. Do you remember? And because most people are going, oh yes, that's this Thursday, isn't it, that election? And them saying the name of the person. It's actually that's still the most powerful thing.
It's the biggest surprise about this, not the fact that the Tories did it or any political party did it. It's the fact that the mainstream media is not picking up on it at all. They're not talking about it. Like you say, Channel 4 are doing a little bit of an ongoing investigation, but as the police investigate it, nobody else is touching it.
Yeah, I think it's tough, because it's not necessarily, it's also not it's not as fun in one
It's not
level.
a sexy story.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as fun about, you know, kind of taking the mick out of Boris Johnson or Mr. Corbyn and all the rest of that stuff. But, you know, or all of the kind of, all the stuff that kind of really grabs the headlines. Because it's actually good old-fashioned journalism, because it means you have to go and find out, well, did you spend this money in this hotel in Cornwall? You know, it's those
Forensic journalism.
You know, all of that, old school, old styly. But I'm concerned that it's not a bigger story than it is, simply because of the consequences of it, really. Because I don't believe it was the absolute defining factor of the general election. Far from it. But we have those rules for a reason, and we need to stand by them for our democracy to function. Absolutely.
Such a situation asks more questions than it gives answers. So that's the worrying part, I think, of it. But thank you for a really interesting something to say tonight, and something that people can further investigate themselves online or by following certain journalists that are following the story.
Absolutely. Not to promote another rival channel, but Channel 4 have been doing quite well about it. But also, look at, again, use your favourite search engine on the netty web. So kind of look into election expenses. Yeah.
And there's probably little bits and pieces in private eye and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to go to another break now, but please don't go away. I'll be back with Loz and Drew, with Drew having their something to say here on the TV soapbox. That is the Daily Rundown.